Joining me now, the founder of Empire Sports Media, Alex Wilson. Alex, great to have you back. Thanks so much for spending a couple minutes with me to talk about the Giants.
Of course. Well, we have an unexpected start to the season, 2-0, one of the only remaining undefeated teams. I didn't think I would be saying that at this point in the season already, but I'll tell you what, I'm optimistic. I'm excited about the rest of the way, and we got a big game against Dallas coming up on Monday night.
Listen, I mean, the chance to go 3-0 to start the year, I don't think the Giants have done that in quite some time. 2009, I think, was the last time. So credit to Brian Daboll for figuring out a way to squeak out a couple of wins here to start the season. Talk to me about where the pass rushers are at heading into this Monday night game against Dallas. Kayvon Thibodeaux will be back, won't be back. How do they sort of approach the situation at pass rush?
So Brian Daboll said today that they're getting closer. They're getting there. I don't know if they will play, but the optimism is definitely there that they will be available. At least Kayvon Thibodeaux, who was running full sprints on Friday, which is a pretty good indication that he's getting healthier, got rolled up on, obviously the big hit that he took to his knee in the preseason game against the Bengals was definitely a little bit heart dropping. Everyone kind of got worried about that one. But then Ojulari has a calf injury, that he sustained in preseason as well. So this is kind of ongoing. They wanted to make sure Thibodeaux was 100% healthy, but it seems like he's making really good progress. And in his stead, Ocean Ximenez and Jihad Ward have really stepped up in his absence to fill in the holes. And ultimately, they've both been tremendous to start the year. Very, very impressed and surprised about how well they've actually played, especially against Tennessee and Carolina. Both have decent offenses. Tennessee obviously was a number one seed last year and a playoff contending team, kind of getting beat up a little bit early on in the year this year. But ultimately, I've been very impressed by the defense. Wink Martindale has stepped up and delivered. Nobody thought that he would be able to put together a unit as competent as it's been, especially with a lot of reserve guys missing your two top pass rushers. But we're getting closer. There's a lot of optimism that Thibodeaux will be available for Monday night against Dallas, which would be huge, especially since they have a spotty offensive line themselves.
And if Ojulari's not back, I mean, who should complement Thibodeaux? You mentioned both of those guys kind of impressing or exceeding expectations. I mean, what do you kind of view as the best plan of attack if they do have Kayvon back in the fold?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think that, you kind of use Ximenez and Jihad Ward in different ways, right? Ward has been really good on the ground in terms of stopping the run, really, really good veteran experience there and just a veteran presence to replace kind of one of those pass rushers who are a little bit less experienced. Ojulari, definitely added a little bit of weight this year, 10 pounds of muscle mass. So there's optimism that he will be a little bit better in sealing the edge. But Ward's experience, he's really good in that fast set. He's been tremendous there. I think you use him on earlier downs, and I think you use Ximenez on the second, third downs, third and longs, generate a lot more pass rush. I think he has 5 total pressures to start the year, including a sack and a couple of quarterback hits. So that's been really impressive from him. But I do think, utilizing both of them would be the best strategy, just, extrapolating on their strengths and playing them to those strengths.
When you look at this offense and this receiving core, it seems like Brian Daboll, at least from what I've read, has said that you have to earn it in practice. He's really looking at these guys executing on a week in, week out basis. And we've seen a couple of different guys maybe get priority. Which receiver do you think will really kind of be the go-to guy on Monday against Dallas?
Well, we've seen David Sills step up as they've kind of, decreased Kenny Galladay's workload. He only played in 3% of snaps this past week against Carolina, which obviously indicates he's not really in the fold anymore. They've taken him out of the equation entirely because David Sills, he's been a practice squad player for a couple of years now. And nobody expected him to play such a prominent role. He's taken all of those snaps. He played 92% of snaps in week 2, and Galladay played 77% in week 1. So his role just continues to diminish. I don't exactly know what they're going to do there. I mean, I'll tell you what, I would love to get a job that pays me $16 million to not really do much. Sounds like a great gig. But I'll tell you what, I think that Richie James is a guy that I've really been impressed by. He was someone that nobody really talked about going into preseason, spoke about really going into the last couple of weeks, but he's leading the Giants in catches. He's leading the Giants in reception yards so far. He's turned into a pretty good security blanket for Daniel Jones. 2 of Jones's best throws over the past 2 weeks have gone to Richie James. And he's also an integral piece on the special teams unit as a kick returner. So I've been very impressed by Richie James. He's turned into a pretty reliable pass catcher. He's a good route runner. He comes up in big moments. Daniel Jones trusts him, and I think that's the most important part.
Daniel Jones must be feeling, I dare say, maybe confident or like there's a little bit of relief just to potentially start the season 3-0 if they can pull this off against a Dallas team that's had some injuries themselves. How good is it for him to get out of the gate with a couple of wins under his belt? Because there's no question offensively, he was the biggest storyline, the biggest question mark going in, do or die, has to make it work this season. Has this been good for his confidence?
I imagine he definitely feels good about winning football games, especially after the last couple of years have been not so good. And, winning kind of cures all. That's kind of the mantra that the Giants are trying to install, is that if you win football games, you find ways to do it. It compounds over time. And I think that Daniel Jones has seen a couple of good moments and a couple of bad moments. A lot of his really good moments have come on the ground with it using his legs. He's missed a couple of reads the last 2 weeks. The offensive line has been a bit spotty, especially the interior rookie Evan Neal at the right tackle spot has also had his fair share of growing pains, but he's getting better on a week-by-week basis. Andrew Thomas has played at an all-pro level, so definitely locking down the left tackle spots helped Daniel Jones tremendously with a little bit more time in the pocket, but I'd like him just to be a little bit more consistent, right? The first half of the game last week was really ugly. He threw almost a pick six to end the half there. He got away with one, but that against a better team, against a better player, that's 6 points the other way. So he's got to be better in finding the right receivers. Of course, the talent around him is a little bit thin. Kenny Galladay's not playing. Kadarius Toney's injured, pretty consistently. So, we can't really depend on him. And then, of course, you kind of have a spotty offensive line that, 50% of his dropbacks over 2 weeks, this is the most in the league. He's been pressured on 50% of his dropbacks. There's like contradicting stats that'll tell you that he has had the second most time in the pocket across all quarterbacks in the league over 2 weeks. So, you kind of look at it as Daniel Jones has a lot of time in the pocket, but he's getting pressure on those dropbacks. He's not getting rid of the ball fast enough. And the biggest problem for Daniel Jones, I think, is getting through his progressions. His processing power is a little bit weak. It has been forever. This has always been a major flaw of his. He fails to find receivers downfield. He can miss throws. He makes bad decisions, but he's really, really accurate when he does get the ball out of his hands. If he could just get a little bit better in terms of getting through his progressions, making the right throws, finding his receivers open downfield, he can deliver the ball accurately. I have no question about that. Just the mental aspect, he's just lagging a little bit, but hopefully Brian Daboll and Calf can get the most out of him.
Yeah, you mentioned the slow start. I mean, they have been outscored by pretty significant margins through the first 30 minutes of each of these games to start the year. And obviously we're dealing with a small sample size here, but is improvement in those progressions and getting the ball out of his hands faster the ultimate solve for maybe getting out to a faster start? I mean, the offensive line, if they're not up to snuff, that kind of is what it is. That's something he's going to have to deal with all year. But I mean, are there small sort of tweaks that they can make to hopefully get out of the gate a little bit faster on Monday, for example, against Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of have to look at where their weaknesses are, right? I mean, you look at Dallas, they have a tremendous pass rush. DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, you cannot really stop them. I mean, Andrew Thomas will do his best. Obviously, he's one of the better left tackles in the league now, as he's proven. But Evan Neal's going to have his hands full. The interior line's going to have their hands full. Daniel Jones is not going to have time in the pocket to throw the football. And that's going to be a big, big problem because they have a decent secondary too. Look at Trayvon Diggs. He's having a pretty decent start to the year. Obviously one of the more athletic cornerbacks in football. And he played really well against Jamar Chase this past weekend. So, with that type of pass rush, it makes things incredibly difficult. So I expect to see a lot more, security blanket type of throws to maybe tight end Daniel Bellinger. Saquon Barkley's got to have a big game. The run blocking has to be good. Carolina committed to stopping Barkley, and they limited the Giants offense pretty significantly. Most of their points came off of turnovers because, the defense played so well. They had those first two turnovers in the first quarter, gave Daniel Jones a chance to score touchdowns. And he only walked away with field goals. Red zone efficiency for DJ has been one of his biggest flaws. And I think that, that interception in week 1 against Tennessee kind of put that on display. But he's got to convert. That's the end of the day. Good quarterbacks convert in the red zone, and they elevate everybody around them. I don't really get the sense that DJ has been elevating everybody around him just yet, especially with a lot of kind of lack of talent on the wide receiver position. But, Wan'Dale Robinson has the knee injury. Hopefully he returns in the coming days here and can kind of assist him in that category. But so far, beating Dallas really comes down to DJ not making mistakes. They have to win the turnover battle, and they have to establish the run because that'll open up play action. It'll open up the passing game a little bit more, and maybe they can take some shots downfield.
I mean, it seems like Micah Parsons is a player that you just have to suck it up and say, you know what, there's no way that we can beat this guy with the personnel that we have. And so you basically create a game plan for how you're going to allow him to get his, and then, like you said, open up the run game. So you fully expect them to do that on Monday.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if they didn't put their best pass rusher on Evan Neal, who is going to struggle against them, he's had his fair share of issues against Jeffrey Simmons and Brian Burns last week. This is definitely not a good situation for the Giants offensive line because, they can say, DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, whoever we pick, they're going to kick the butt of Evan Neal. Unfortunately, he's a rookie. This is what we expected. We need him to take the steps forward and grow. But this is how you do it. You kind of get thrown into the fire, and you have to take on some of the best players in football. And I don't expect him to win every battle. Hopefully he stands his ground and, can win some of those. But, Daniel Jones is going to have to be a lot faster with his reads, a lot faster with his progressions. He's going to have to be mentally sharp. And they're playing at home. They're with the color rush jerseys. This is going to be a very, high octane atmosphere. And hopefully the crowd kind of buys into DJ and gives him the support he needs and doesn't boo him early on if he makes mistakes.
And their defensive lineman, Leonard Williams, who I think a lot of Giants fans would know is a pretty tough guy. I mean, really consistent, sort of the model of this iron kind of lineman, but has been dealing with some injury. What's the latest update on his potential availability?
So he's day-to-day right now. He had a sprained MCL, so I'm not exactly sure the timetable for recovery on sprained MCLs, but I do know that he is an extremely reliable player. He has not missed many games, if any, in his entire career, so that's been very impressive on his part. But I think that maximum he misses one game. I don't think this is a multi-week injury. Maybe he toughs it out. Maybe they put him in big situations and they just use him situationally to just try to maximize how many reps he can actually put on the field. Maybe he wears a brace and he just toughs it out. Like you said, he's a tough guy, so it's possible he does that. Right now, I would lean toward he's going to play because day-to-day sounds a lot better than week-to-week. But again, this is definitely a situation where I think like it's game time. They're going to have to probably make that decision a half an hour or an hour before the game to see if he can actually hold up.
So a huge rival at home. You mentioned the uniforms, big time atmosphere, big test for some of these young guys, especially the rookies who, as you say, are very much still in development mode. Ultimately, do you think the Giants can get this Monday night win?
Yeah, I mean, look, Dallas's offense is definitely in a strange spot. They have Cooper Rush as their quarterback. Dak Prescott's out. Their offensive line looks really spotty. And, the Bengals have been underwhelming this year. They have not performed well the first 2 games of the season. And this is a home game for the Giants. They can, and Carolina, like Matt Rule, for the head coach of Carolina Panthers, said after the game, the crowd noise played a part in the offense's efficiency. They had to go silent count. The crowd was electric. They were loud. They made it really difficult for the communication on the offensive side for the Panthers. Hopefully, and I know they will do this again for Dallas because, they're going to be going crazy, especially with the color rush and everything going on. And hopefully Kayvon Thibodeau comes back. They're going to be very, very excited. It'll be a loud situation. Cooper Rush, he executed well last week. You have CeeDee Lamb as your number 1 receiver on Dallas, and Adoree Jackson's having a tremendous start to the season. I imagine they'll man him up. They're going to send a lot of pressure at Cooper Rush. They're going to make him beat the Giants. They're going to shut down the running game. They're going to force Cooper Rush to beat him with his arm. So I think that's kind of the strategy in terms of beating Dallas.
Before I let you go, if there is one X factor for New York heading into this game, outside of some of the points that we've already discussed, and Daniel Jones will clearly need to execute and be really efficient, especially in the red zone, like you mentioned, and getting out and kind of getting the ball out of his hands faster. But, what are the 1 or maybe even 2 kind of X factors that you're going to be watching for on Monday night if there's a chance that they can get this done?
The X factors, I think, I'll kind of cover both offensive and defensive. The offensive X factors are you got to establish the run. Saquon Barclay's got to take over like he did in week 1. Dallas is always a tough team to beat. I think that you have to win the turnover battle. You have to win the time of possession. You got to make sure that Dallas stays off the football field. DJ's got to be very, very careful. He's got to get through his progressions quickly. Don't make any dumb mistakes, as we've seen in the past. And I think the offensive line has to rise to the occasion. This is a game that the Giants can win. They should win this game. They have momentum. Dallas is struggling. I know they won last week, but that I think that was kind of the Bengals shooting themselves in the foot. Joe Burrow just hasn't looked great to start the year. And ultimately, this is going to come down to the offensive line. It always does for the Giants. If they protect Daniel Jones, he can get it done. But the receivers definitely are a bit concerning. Kadarius Toney was placed on the injury report today. They're giving Sterling Shepard a day off of rest, and this is definitely an interesting situation to see who kind of is available for the offense. On the defensive side, Xavier McKinney's my guy. Like, that's the guy I'm looking at to say, okay, locking down the secondary. He can do so much. He can move up into the box. Lincoln Martindale had him playing linebacker last week because we had a lot of coverage flaws there. If Kayvon Thibodeau plays, of course, he's a catalyst to try and beat, decent offensive tackles for Dallas, but their interior is a little bit weak. So, it really comes down to those big names showing up. The Giants have gotten a lot of effort, a lot of value and production from, backups and reserves, but, we're getting some guys healthy now, and they've got to step up and showcase what they can do.